boyfriend and I posted our relationship on Instagram. Now everyone thinks I'm a two-timing liar in a fantasy romance with David. I'm 21, female, and my boyfriend, who's 23, and I just made our relationship Instagram official, even though we've been seeing each other for about 8 months. Honestly, he's my soulmate. I've never been this happy in my life. We're even in the middle of moving in together, which just feels right on every level. But then there's David. We go way back. I grew up in a small town, one of those places where you're practically assigned your group of friends in elementary school and stick with them. David wasn't part of my original crew, but when we all started high school, he joined us and quickly became one of my better friends. We even ended up working at the same restaurant, and that brought us even closer. Until everything went sideways. My second year of high school, I agreed to go to homecoming with John, another friend in our group. Right after that, David started freezing both of us out. He convinced the rest of the group to stop hanging out with us at lunch and after school, and at work, it was like I was invisible. The weird part? As soon as John and I mutually decided we were better as just friends, things with David suddenly went back to normal. Then came prom. David asked me to go with him, but I turned him down politely, even explained that I wanted to go with my best friend, Tracy, who'd just gotten out of a relationship and needed a girls' night. But David wouldn't take no for an answer. He kept insisting, and I just kept declining. The night of prom, I found out he'd even texted Tracy ahead of time to ask what color dress I'd be wearing, then showed up in a tux the same color. The entire night, he kept making weird comments like, "We look like a couple, and this would have been more fun as a date." After that, I avoided him whenever I could. A couple months after high school, David started dating a girl from the next town over, and I ended up, unfortunately, in a string of toxic relationships. We lost touch. Eventually, both David and I became single again, and, surprise, he reached out to me. Being the kind of person who tries to be nice, I listened to his breakup drama. He started dropping hints, talking about how maybe he was ready to date again and was looking for someone like me. I made it crystal clear I wasn't interested, told him I hoped he'd find someone else, and left it there. I graduated a little early, moved away for college, and slowly drifted away from the old friend group. David, though, kept texting me, every single day, even while I barely responded, sometimes only once a month. He'd ask to come visit me, or suggest I should fly out and see him. I always said no. Eventually, I just stopped replying altogether. In hindsight, maybe not the nicest move, but I honestly didn't know what else to do. Now, here's where it all gets insane. After I posted those pictures with my boyfriend, suddenly my DMs were blowing up with messages from my old high school friends, all calling me a heartless bitch and accusing me of cheating on David. According to them, I was two-timing him, leading him on, betraying him. I was floored. I told them point blank that David and I never dated, never even came close, and that I'd been turning him down since high school. That's when I found out David's side of the story. Apparently, he's been telling everyone that I'm the reason he and his ex broke up, because he and I were too in love with each other. He told people we actually did go to prom together. And, apparently, he's been telling everyone that we've been doing long distance this whole time. Worst of all, he even told his mom he wants to marry me. He actually asked her for her ring. She DM'd me, angry and demanding explanations. I honestly don't know how it got to this point. I have never led this guy on. I've made it extremely clear that I wasn't interested, over and over again, for years. Yet suddenly, everyone is saying I'm the villain, that I played with his feelings. My boyfriend and his sister think this is all completely insane, and honestly, I feel like I'm losing my mind. How can I possibly be leading someone on to the degree that he's convinced we're together, when we haven't spoken in 5 months and I've been rejecting him since high school? I just want to scream. Update 1. After I moved away from my hometown, I lost a lot of contact with my old friends. Most of us only really interact through social media now, if at all, and meanwhile, my friends still see David on a regular basis since they still live in the same town. I have been back for a few visits since I left, but things just aren't the same. I'm not much of an Instagram user. I rarely ever post, and honestly, I barely know my way around half the apps people seem glued to. Before everything happened, I didn't even really know what Reddit was until my boyfriend's sister introduced it to me. Now, when I think back, maybe Instagram official wasn't quite the right phrase for what I did. Recently, my boyfriend and I went on a trip to Niagara Falls, and I just wanted to share some fun moments from that getaway, which ended up being the first pictures of us I ever posted. Before that, my last post was just a few graduation shots back in 2021. If you checked my account, you'd only find a grand total of 2 posts. After I uploaded those Niagara Falls photos, another mutual friend, Carly, reached out. She didn't jump straight to accusations. Instead, she just sounded confused about everything. We set up a FaceTime call on Sunday, and that's when she told me the whole story about what David had been doing and saying. Since I moved away, David apparently started hinting to everyone that we were in a long-distance relationship. He would claim to visit me every weekend, and he'd even send so-called good morning streaks on Snapchat, selfies in bed with a girl who had the same color hair as me. He did this every single weekend. My old friends, trying to include me, kept asking if I'd ever come back and visit them and David. His response? That I was always too busy to make the trip. The wildest part? They all believed him and told him what a wonderful boyfriend he was for always being the one to travel. I asked Carly if she could show me the photos David had been spreading around. When she sent them, I immediately spotted that the bed frame and sheets didn't look anything like mine. Carly and I kept talking, and I sent her my own screenshots, documenting every single time I'd rejected or ignored David's messages. Then I asked Carly if David had ever sent any photos of the two of us together, with my actual face in the frame. She told me yes. Apparently, just last weekend, he'd sent out a photo of us sitting together on a park bench and told everyone he'd only started sharing photos with my face in them since last month. Here's the part that really bent reality. Since high school, I've gotten 2 full-arm flower tattoos. In those photos, my arms were completely bare, no tattoos, nothing. I told Carly that, and we both got even more confused. Did David manage to find a lookalike? Was he paying someone to pretend to be me? Or was this something even weirder? I showed my boyfriend the pictures, and he pointed out some details I hadn't noticed before. First, every single one was in black and white. In one, you could even spot a faint little stock image logo in the background. Then my boyfriend realized the photos looked suspiciously similar to old family pictures taken from my mom's Facebook 6 years ago, but all distorted, things like bigger chest and hips. That's when we realized, David was probably photoshopping these images, using whatever tech skills he picked up in high school to create proof of our non-existent relationship. I was done. Quietly, I gathered all the evidence, every screenshot, every detail, and sent it directly to everyone who'd accused me, and to David's mother. Then I blocked all of them. My mother did the same with people she didn't know on Facebook. She's a bit older and doesn't always recognize the dangers lurking online, still clicks weird links in emails sometimes. My boyfriend and I decided not to take any legal action right away, unless this resurfaces again. Instead, we've decided to upgrade the security around our new home, adding more cameras, and I now keep pepper spray on my keychain wherever I go. We're still looking into other safety measures, because honestly, you can never be too careful. For anyone who's had to go through something like this, my heart aches for you. The world is full of dangerous, unpredictable people, and no one deserves that kind of trauma, stress, or pain. I hope anyone who's been in a situation like mine finds some peace and justice in the end. Please take care of yourselves. I'm finally starting to understand this truly wasn't my fault. Update 2. I thought blocking everyone would be the period at the end of a very stupid sentence. It bought me 3 days. Sunday morning my mom called me at 7 a.m. with her voice shaking and sent a photo of the small town paper's engagements page. My face was there, my full name, his full name, a date in June, a church I actually attended as a kid, and a love story blurb that read like a bad Hallmark script about high school sweethearts reuniting after college. I don't even have a middle name publicly listed anywhere, and it was there in perfect spelling. I sat on the edge of our mattress on the floor and felt like I'd been dunked in cold water. I got the paper on the phone and the editor sounded horrified once I explained, but she told me the announcement was submitted through their portal with a deposit and 2 reference contacts. The email used was a variation of my name at Gmail that wasn't mine by 1 letter. They asked me to send my ID and any proof, and when I did, they pulled the announcement and promised to run a correction next issue. She said one of the references on the form was his mother. That made my stomach turn because I had just sent her everything and blocked her. So either she doubled down or he forged that too. An hour later our leasing office called to confirm adding your fiancé to the lease. My boyfriend and I looked at each other like, excuse me? Apparently a man had come by Friday afternoon with my name memorized, said he was moving in, and tried to hand over a money order for the difference to speed things up. He knew our unit number. He told them I was at work and couldn't stop by. The only reason the office didn't proceed is because both signatures are required and they wanted me to stop in with my ID. I checked our doorbell camera history, and there he was in a ball cap and hoodie, 30 minutes after I posted our Niagara album in my story weeks ago, standing 6 feet from my door at 5:42 p.m. Friday, fiddling with something in his pocket, then slipping a manila envelope under the doormat and walking away fast. I didn't see it when I came home because the wind must have blown it into the corner of the hallway. We found it behind our shoe rack. Inside were printed save the date cards with our names in cursive, a QR code to a wedding website, and a typed letter telling me, I forgive you for being scared, I will take care of everything. There were 2 Polaroids of him grinning at a restaurant table, holding up a box with a ring inside, and an empty chair across from him with my jacket draped over it. I don't even own that jacket. We called the non-emergency line, an officer came out, took the envelope, watched the video, and told me to file for a protective order first thing Monday. He also told me to stop scanning any codes or typing in URLs from this person in case there was malicious stuff attached. My boyfriend scanned the QR with his old iPad on a guest network anyway because stubborn, and the site popped up on a wedding platform with a countdown, a registry full of items in neutral colors, a venue deposit paid at the church, and a private album of our engagement photos. Every single photo was black and white, every single one had the same weird edited softness to it, and in one of them my teenage self was wearing a sweater that I 100% recognized from my mom's Facebook, except now my hands were holding his face and a ring that was never on my finger. If you zoomed in, the ring floated just slightly wrong over my knuckle. Monday morning I filed, brought a stack of screenshots, the paper confirmation, the leasing office affidavit that he tried to add himself, the video of him at our door, and a folder of my tattoo progression with dates. The clerk gave me an emergency order for a week and a hearing date. The sheriff's office served him that afternoon, and I know because Carly texted me that he posted a black square on his story with, "She's in danger" typed across it. Before the hearing, the church called me. The woman who did scheduling wanted to clarify floral preferences. I hadn't even processed that he put a deposit down there. I told her flat out I did not consent to any of that and emailed them the protective order. She said she would take care of it and asked if I wanted to pick up the check they were voiding. I told her to mail it back to the address they had on file because I didn't want to be anywhere near anything he touched. The address she read back was his mother's house. The hearing was surreal. Tiny wood-paneled room, a judge who looked like she'd seen every flavor of nonsense, and me feeling like my heart could be heard by everyone when they called my name. He came in wearing a suit I'd recognize from high school photos and carrying a binder. He sat down and would not look at me. When the judge asked me to speak, I did, and I kept it simple. I showed her the camera footage, the paper's retraction email, the lease office note, the photos with the watermarks and my tattoos missing, the text history that was him talking to himself for months. Then it was his turn, and he started crying before he said a single word. He opened his binder and began laying out printed black and white photos one by one on the table like he was performing a magic trick. The judge looked at them, looked at me, then asked him when the photo of us on the bench was taken. He said last month. The judge asked me to roll up my sleeves. I did. The room was silent. She asked him why I had no tattoos in the photo if it was last month. He said, she covered them up with makeup, and the judge very kindly asked him if he believed makeup could remove the fact my arms have color that wraps from wrist to shoulder. He started talking about how we've been together for years in private, that my boyfriend is coercing me, that he let me go public so I wouldn't feel trapped, and then he said, I paid for our venue. The judge didn't even look at me when she granted the order. She looked at him and said, you are to have no contact with her in any form, no third-party contact, no showing up at her home or place of work. You will remove any online content that references her within 24 hours. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Do you understand? He nodded and started crying again. His mother was in the back. She stayed seated, her hands clenched around her purse strap so tight her knuckles were white. I thought that would be the end. That night my email was bombed with RSVP notifications to that wedding site. I wasn't tagged in anything, nobody sent me anything directly, but the site had my real email plugged into the RSVP list and every time someone clicked yes, I got an automatic note with their name. That's how I learned there was an engagement party planned at a bowling alley I grew up in. I called the manager and told him, and he said, he was in here last week with decorations. He canceled the reservation and promised to call the police if anyone showed up asking questions. We changed my email everywhere and I put filters on so I wouldn't have to read stranger names saying can't wait to celebrate you. 2 days later, the judge's clerk called me and told me he had already violated the order by sending a bouquet to my apartment with a note tucked under the ribbon reading, "This is my last try." I know he violated because the florist printed their full info on the receipt and it was in the envelope. We didn't even bring the flowers inside. My boyfriend took a photo and we set the bouquet on the sidewalk and went back upstairs and sat on the couch and didn't talk for a long time. An officer came by that evening and took another report. They found him at his job and issued him a citation. I didn't think I'd feel anything except relief, but when I heard they actually cuffed him and walked him out, my hands wouldn't stop shaking for an hour. Somewhere in the middle of that, his mother emailed me. A real apology this time, long and rambling, with a scanned letter from a therapist's office and a promise they were getting him help. She said she believed me now. I forwarded it to the officer and didn't reply. There's one more thing. I thought the Photoshop was the creepiest part until Carly texted me a screen recording she'd gotten from a guy in the next town who recognized me. He sent her a TikTok I had never made, my face, my voice, me talking about how long distance was hard but worth it. The captions used phrases I use. The cadence was off by half a beat. The tattoo on my left forearm blurred if you paused. Someone had used old clips of me from a public graduation slideshow and a couple of my mom's videos and stitched a whole fake clip together. It had a couple thousand views. We reported it and it disappeared an hour later. I cried in the shower after that, not because of him, but because it feels like a person can reach into your life and rearrange it like furniture if they want it badly enough. We finished moving in. We changed our locks, met our neighbors, taught the cameras our faces so they stopped pinging my phone every time we walked past. My boyfriend put my name on the lease next to his and we stood there a second and looked at it and both laughed because it felt like reclaiming something very small and very necessary. The order is good for a year. If he breathes in my direction, I'm calling. If nothing else, I finally believe myself. I can see in black and white, and in full color, what happened, what's real, what isn't, and what I'll never allow into my life again. Update 3. Friday morning I woke up to an email from USPS Informed Delivery that I only signed up for because my boyfriend is a nerd about mail. There was a little grayscale preview of a letter from the post office addressed to me with change of address confirmation in the corner. I hadn't requested anything. I was at our post office the minute they opened with a sweatshirt over my pajamas. The woman at the counter pulled my name up, frowned, and went to the back. She came out holding a hardcopy PS Form 3575. My name and old address. Forwarding to his mother's house. The signature was a shaky version of my own. The manager came out, took one look, and said, "We're kicking this up to the inspector." They photocopied my ID and gave me a copy of the forged form like a museum exhibit. It made my hand sweat to hold it. He had written "newly married" in the little note field. On the way home my phone rang with an unknown number and I answered because I'm jumpy now. "Hi, this is the county clerk. Just confirming your premarital counseling appointment for Monday?" I sat on the curb outside our building and stared at the cracks in the concrete while my face got hot. I told her I had a protective order and that I wouldn't be anywhere near a counselor with him, now or ever. She pulled up the file and read out what he'd submitted. My full legal name, my date of birth, my boyfriend's last name hyphenated to his. "He booked it under your email," she added, and when I said that wasn't my email, she said, "Then he's created a very convincing one." She flagged it and told me she would make a note on their internal system so nothing could be scheduled with my name on it without two-party ID. I walked back upstairs and put my face in my boyfriend's shoulder and laughed a little because there's a point where it stops being scary and just tilts into absurd. It didn't stay there. Around dinner, a lift pulled up hard enough to make the hood dip and the driver leaned out his window and called my name. He said, "The groom paid for this one." He said you get nervous. The word groom knocked whatever humor I'd left out of me. We told the driver about the order and showed him the copy on my phone and he looked like he'd swallowed a battery. He let me take a picture of his ride request screen. The pickup note had the exact phrase he used in high school when he was trying to get me to go to prom, down to the missing apostrophe and don't. An officer came out, took the screenshot, took our statements, and shook his head in that way people do when something is both outrageous and boring to them now because they've seen too much. Monday the postal inspector called and asked if I could meet him at the station. He had the original change of address card and a second one that had been dropped in a blue box that morning, this time sending my mail to a small P.O. box 2 towns over. He told me, very politely, that this is a federal problem when it crosses into mail, that they work with local PD when there's a protective order, and that they were going to get a warrant for any cameras at the box where it was dropped. I didn't know whether to feel relief or fear that the circle was widening. The warrant happened faster than I expected. By Wednesday a detective from the cyber unit called and asked if I'd be home around 3 because they might need me to identify items. At 3:17 p.m., 3 unmarked cars rolled quietly down our street like a video playing on mute. I wasn't invited, obviously, but 2 hours later the detective called back and said they had executed a search warrant at his mother's house. He told me, in that measured tone, that they had taken a desktop tower, 2 external hard drives, 3 composition notebooks, and a vinyl accordion folder labeled Documents, U.S. He said there were mock-ups of wedding programs with our names, a list of mutual contacts to convert, and a spreadsheet of dates. There was also an envelope with printed screenshots of my Instagram and my mom's Facebook posts annotated in blue pen with circles around my sweater cuffs and hair parts, like he was studying for a test on me. The detective said, "I don't tell victims this often because I don't like promising anything and being wrong, but this is good evidence." It came with a crash on the other side. He violated the order again that night through a third party. Carly sent me a screenshot of a new account pretending to be me with my graduation photo as the profile picture, messaging our old friend group with an "I can't say much because of legal stuff, but I still love him." The account name had the I and L swapped. The detective had me report it and then forwarded the URL. 2 hours later, officers were at his job again. This time they didn't just cite him. They took him. He was arraigned the next morning on violation of the order and a stalking charge, and the judge put a GPS monitor on his ankle and took away his phone. He stood there and cried and looked like the same boy who had asked me in 10th grade if I wanted to watch bad movies at his house, and I felt nothing but a throb of tired under my ribs. The deepfakes weren't as sophisticated as I was terrified they'd be. The cyber unit got logs from the wedding site and traced admin logins to his mother's Wi-Fi and his work computer. They found a folder on his desktop literally named Proof that was just layers of me pasted badly against things. My boyfriend was right about the watermark. There were 3 different apps involved, and one of them left a tiny thumbnail of my mom's original Facebook album in the corner like a breadcrumb. The wedding platform took the site down and sent an email saying they were cooperating with law enforcement, and someone on their policy team actually called and asked me for a statement so they could use this case to tighten their verification for couple accounts. I said the single stupidly earnest thing I've said through all of this: please just don't let this happen to someone who doesn't have a camera on their door. His mother left me a voicemail after the arrest. She cried the whole way through and told me she had handed over a bin from the garage that had every card he printed for the engagement party that never happened. The top one was addressed to my late grandmother. I sat on the floor and tried to breathe around the thought of him sliding an envelope across a table and writing her name on it carefully like that could make things true. The postal inspector called again on Friday with an update that felt like a clean cut. They had footage of him at the blue box dropping both change of address forms. He was wearing the same ball cap from my door camera. They're pursuing charges on the mail fraud side in addition to whatever the county's doing. 2 weird things happened that made me feel, briefly, like the universe was kind. One of the old friends who'd believed him sent me a photo of the save the date still stuck on their fridge with a magnet shaped like a corn cob and said, "I took it down." I'm sorry. And an email popped into my inbox from the church woman who'd voided the check. It was 3 words, it's been refunded. No drama. Just a small door closed. We adopted a cat because it was either that or I was going to jump every time a leaf skated down the hall. She is interested in the door camera and not at all in us, and it makes me laugh every time. We changed our Wi-Fi name to something that made my boyfriend snort when he typed it. We went to the DMV together so I could put a note on my file that no changes can be made without me in person with 2 forms of ID, and we got soft serve from the machine at the gas station on the way back like kids who cut class. He's on a monitor. There's a status hearing next month. The detective told me if he so much as steps on our block, the strap will scream. I sleep now, not all the way through, not every night, but I sleep, and when the cameras ping my phone it's because our cat decided 3 a.m. was a runway. I know this will probably not be a straight line from here to quiet. But there are more people in this with me now than there are around him. When I signed the form at the post office to block any future changes, my hand didn't shake. I wrote my name like it belonged to me. And for the first time in weeks, that felt like an ending I could actually be part of. Update 4. The status hearing landed on a Tuesday that felt like static. Same hallway outside the courtroom, same victim advocate with the soft voice, same wood paneling. He came in with the ankle monitor peeking out above a too shiny shoe. The prosecutor asked for a psych eval before anything else got decided, his lawyer asked for diversion, and the judge kept her face still and said, "We'll see what the evaluator says," then extended my order to 5 years on the record regardless of outcome. She also barred him from any device that touches the internet unless it's for work and pre-approved. When she asked if I wanted to make a statement, I read 6 sentences I'd written at our kitchen table with coffee rings on the paper. My hands didn't shake. I went home and fell asleep on the couch with our cat asleep like a parenthesis against my knees. 2 days later, a woman from his company's HR called me using the number the detective gave them. "We received a dependent enrollment form for you," she said carefully, "and because there's an order in place, we flagged it. It listed you as spouse. We need you to confirm you did not authorize that." I told her no, obviously, and she said they had a copy of a marriage certificate attached with my name hyphenated to his and a seal that looked like it had been ironed on. She emailed it to the detective and CC'd me. The city on the certificate was wrong. The font was wrong. There was a smudge where my signature bled because an inkjet got enthusiastic. I felt something in my jaw unclench because sometimes things that feel like smoke turn back into paper when you look at them in daylight. Packages started showing up that week, too. Not to our door, downstairs in the lobby, the way stuff ends up when the courier doesn't bother with apartment numbers. They had my first name and his last, or both of our names with a hyphen that isn't real, a stand mixer in almond, a set of linen napkins I'd never pick because they'd stain if you looked at them. The building manager called up and asked if I was accepting wedding gifts. We had them returned to sender and I forwarded the tracking numbers to the detective. He called the registry company and they started reversing charges to whatever cards his mother's address was tied to. I watched a parade of presents leave the way they came and cried a little because grief is weird and apparently, it comes for neutral kitchenware. I got a call from Vital Records next. A woman with a voice like a math teacher told me someone had tried to order a certified copy of my birth certificate using the P.O. Box 2 towns over where he tried to send my mail. She said she was calling because there was a fraud alert on my file now and the request didn't pass their ID check. I gave her the case number and she sighed like she'd been waiting to be able to write one down. I put my forehead on the cool edge of our counter after I hung up and laughed in that way that sounds like crying. My boyfriend handed me the cat and she made a noise like a squeaky shoe. The worst part came from my mom. She called on a Sunday when we were carrying in groceries and said the cemetery caretaker had left her a message. There was a laminated sheet tucked into my grandmother's headstone flowers with our names in cursive at the top and vows under it like a script. It was dated that morning. There was a printout of the same fake certificate HR had sent me, and a photo of me from high school that he taped into the corner like a locket. The caretaker said a man in a baseball cap had parked by the lower fence and walked up with a manila envelope. He'd told him my wife forgot these when asked. I didn't even make it to anger. I went straight to a quiet I haven't felt since this started. I called the detective. He called pretrial services. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with a number I recognized as the judge's clerk, then 2 hours of movement I could only hear about afterward. They pulled his GPS data and it put him in that cemetery for 7 minutes. 7 minutes is a lifetime when your freedom is held on a silicone strap. They picked him up at his mother's house before dinner. No one called me to ask me to come down. No one asked me to tell the story again. The prosecutor filed a motion to revoke his bond and the judge granted it without a hearing that day, with a note that said pattern of escalation. The detective told me only what he was allowed to say, that he was in custody, that the monitor was off his ankle and on a desk, that his phone was now a piece of evidence sealed into a bag with a white label and a number on it. It didn't stop spinning because something else knocked the wind out of me in the middle of that. Carly sent me a screenshot from an email chain someone started in the old group titled Surprise Party. It was for a bridal shower at the bowling alley that had already canceled on him, except this was hosted by 2 girls I barely knew from math class back then who'd been convinced by his mother. The invite had a list of favorite things that are not my favorites. It had my real email under please send letters. I watched the RSVP list through the back end of the site the detective had already pried open, and I saw names I loved once pop green under yes. I handed my phone to the detective like it was hot to the touch. He traced the admin login to a public library Wi-Fi in the next town and then to a Chromebook checked out under his mother's card number. 2 hours later, a patrol car took the laptop out of a plastic bin behind the main desk. The librarians were so mad they looked like they'd grow extra eyebrows. Some of the evidence I've seen now feels like reading someone else's diary with my name written on top of every page. The cyber unit printed out a calendar they found in the documents, US folder, and it had little boxes that said things like September, practice new signature, and Thanksgiving. Announce baby, if she's ready. The detective slid it across the table in a clear sleeve and watched my eyes, like he needed to make sure I didn't fall through the floor. I didn't. I handed it back and asked if I could keep a copy for when my brain tells me I'm dramatic at 2 a.m. He said yes. I put it in a drawer next to our lease and a stack of takeout menus and thought, okay, this is what proof looks like. There's practical stuff, too, the kind that stacks into a life whether you want it to or not. The federal side moved. The postal inspector called to say their office submitted the case to the U.S. attorney and that I might hear from someone with a very official signature line. The county prosecutor's victim advocate helped me file for a 10-year extension on the protective order to run concurrent with whatever sentence he gets if it gets that far. The church sent one more email with a simple "we have changed our internal process." The registry site's policy team asked if they could call their new verification the "my first name" rule. I said please just call it something boring so the next person it protects doesn't have to think about me at all. There was one more strange kindness that arrived like a small package with no return address. The bowling alley manager sent me a photo of a trash can with paper decorations sitting on top and wrote, "These were left here months ago. We're throwing them out for good now." No commentary, no smiley face, just a fact arranged into relief. He is in jail right now. The earliest he can ask to get out is after the psych eval is back, and even then, the judge made it clear in as many words as she's allowed to use that stairs to the door are steeper now. Our apartment is quiet. The camera pings are the cat's tail. We put my name on the mailbox label in my own handwriting. A package came addressed only to me last night. My grandmother's friend had crocheted a small blanket and mailed it with a note that said, "For calm." I sat on the floor and let the weight of it sit in my lap and felt my shoulders drop.